Good morning, everybody. We'll start in a moment.
Three major American banks are stockpiling money over fears the coronavirus recession could get even worse. Let me tell you who they are. JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, Citigroup have all set aside almost $30 billion that they say is going to be there to try and cover loan payments that Americans are increasingly unable to make. Those loans include credit card debt that Americans aren't making, business loans, mortgages in forbearance that are sometimes being delayed, in some cases up to a year, that people are telling their banks, look, I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage for at least 6 months, in some cases a year, depending on the bank, depending on the terms. Joining us now to talk about this is Jason Hartman. Jason is the founder and the CEO of Platinum Properties Investment Network. He's also a very prolific investor in his own right. I guess the takeaway here, Jason, is that banks are looking like they're getting stingy with their money and about to become even more stingy down the line. Is that, am I reading this properly?
Yes, Rick. During the Great Recession, everybody blamed the banks for being too liberal in their lending guidelines and giving out a bunch of liar's loans and ninja loans, meaning, no income, no job, doesn't matter, right? And so now the banks are being more conservative. There's no question about it. Even as they have stockpiled between the three big banks that you mentioned, about $28 billion, we are seeing mortgage applications for both purchases and refinances go through the roof. I mean, consumers, homeowners and home buyers cannot resist these low rates. It's causing an artificial boom in the housing market. And there's a lot of repositioning, as we talked about when I was on with you prior, people moving to the suburbs. But one of my fears is that we'll see what we have seen happen after the Great Recession, or even during, is this, this kind of vicious circle, this cause and effect, where the banks overcorrect. On one side of the pendulum, it swings back and forth, right? They're too liberal, and then they become overly conservative, and then that hurts the housing market, hurts the economy overall. So that's one of the things we need to be mindful of, is that let's hope they don't overcorrect. It is good that they're being careful, for sure, but overcorrection is just as bad.
I got invited by Jason Hartman himself, the man, and basically I've been really enjoying it. I actually have 5 doors already in Seattle, and the event has been fabulous. I've learned a ton of stuff already. Jason and his entire crew have been a fabulous inspiration, as well as educational in areas that I thought I was educated in, but I didn't know what I didn't know. And so it's been a great time, and I'm definitely going to probably be investing in a couple of these properties because there's some great deals here and some great opportunities for me to get both some tax savings as well as some equity investments.
Hi, this is Diane Kennedy. I'm a CPA, and I'm so excited to be here at Meet the Masters. I'm getting the opportunity to talk to real estate investors from all over the country, in fact, all over the world. And they're learning about tricks to put more money in their pocket to find some amazing deals. Wow, I'm so glad I came.
Let's talk about the final 10th commandment, right? Now, we do have, as I mentioned before, an additional 10 commandments, but these are the original 10. And this one is about taxes. Now, a lot of people get really bored when I talk about taxes at our real estate conferences. Their eyes roll back in their head and they think taxes, that's so boring. It's such a boring subject. But what you need to realize is that taxes are the single largest expense in most people's life, right? They are the single largest expense. We'll spend a lot of time and a lot of effort shopping for a new car, getting a good deal, even on a piece of real estate, right? We'll put a lot of effort into that. But we won't put any effort at all into saving on the single largest expense in life, taxes. You will, just in income taxes, give away anywhere between probably 30 and 55% of your income in just income tax, right? Just income tax.
All right, everybody. Good morning. How is it going? Awesome investors. Post your questions, post your comments. We've got some exciting stuff today, and let me go ahead and make this screen the right size. Uh, First off, I want to start with this great quote from George Orwell. Now, of course, you know that George Orwell, let me check the sound. Yeah. George Orwell is the author of 1984, the famous book about government intrusion into our lives and in so many crazy ways. And many people have called it COVID. I won't even say the word 1984 instead of COVID 19, because this current situation we are in as a society, as an entire world, the human race is in, just gives government great cover to do whatever they want. Contact tracing. There's been a lot of talk about how they're using our phones, our mobile devices to track our movements and so forth, and they'll know if you're hanging around people who are infected. And there's certainly some good reason for this, some good ideas out of it. And then the next step, of course, is to move to the implanted chip, where they implant a chip in all of us. Some have even hypothesized that chip could come in in such tiny microscopic form that it could actually be injected when you think it's just a vaccine. Yeah, I mean, scary stuff for sure. But in the world in which we live, if you're on social media, you have to agree that this quote is so prescient today. You know, George Orwell said, and this was probably in the 40s, where this quote originated. I'm guessing it was in the 40s because I think 1984 was written in 1949, if I'm not mistaken. By the way, feel free to check me on that and post your answer in the comments. When was 1984 written, the book? And then when was Animal Farm written? Another great book, because some animals are more equal than others. Ain't communism great? So he says, in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. And it is absolutely shocking to me, folks. And I'm sure you have noticed the same thing when you discuss or debate or argue about things on social media platforms or in any form. The lack of critical thinking skills is absolutely it's astonishing. It's disheartening. It should be huge concern. The way so many of us nowadays are just so conditioned. Um, Read a book by Noam Chomsky called Manufacturing Consent. Now, Noam Chomsky, I've had him on my podcast before. He's definitely a leftist. I mean, at least I would think so. He makes some really interesting points. I don't lean to the left too much, too often politically. Sometimes I do, but mostly not. Mostly more of a libertarian. But Noam Chomsky in the book Manufacturing Consent really explains a lot of this type of stuff. So in either case, we'll explore that as time goes on. So welcome to everybody. Check out jasonhartman.com. Check out pandemicinvesting.com and get your free mini book there. Pandemic Investing mini book. It's free at pandemicinvesting.com. If you're in the United States, you can always call us at 1-800-HARTMAN. And to dovetail on to the George Orwell quote, this is one of my favorites. And this is a principle that sadly the American left just does not understand at all. The tolerant American left, and I say tolerant in snarky quotes. And this came from the French philosopher Voltaire. I don't know, this is maybe 200 years ago, right? Something like that. Forgive me. Look it up and post your answer in the comments. Correct my my citation. But he said, I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. And that is exactly the way we should look at speech, because it's not about agreeing with someone or not agreeing with them. The important thing is that you defend the concept of them being able to speak, to say what they want. There's a reason that the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, which was really the first document in human history to ever say. Now, the Magna Carta before that, a few hundred years before, was also to this direction, but the Constitution really solidified it. And unlike every government charter before it, it basically said, look, you know, this document takes away power from the government. It tells the government what they're not allowed to do, because the individual, like Ayn Rand said, there's no such thing as group rights. So, you could categorize the government as a group, right? Everybody's all segmented nowadays into these groups, right? They've all got these special interest groups, their rights, their rights, their rights, And Ayn Rand, and I wish I had the quote on the screen for you, said it so well. She said, "There is no such thing as group rights. There's no such thing as group rights. There are only individual rights, because the smallest minority on earth is the individual." So, she didn't make this comparison like I'm making. I'm kind of jumping around here, maybe a little bit of a leap. But the Constitution of the United States said that there's no such thing as, group rights, in the sense that you can't categorize the government as a group that has certain rights. We want to first say, in the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, we want to first say, look, these are the rights of the individual, and they cannot be violated. Now, sadly, what is happening today is the government is using big giant corporations as a proxy. And then there are those in government, those good people in government, that are changing this, right? And a lot of it's happening, frankly, in the European Union. But they basically are using these companies, these big giant mega corporations that have GDPs, gross domestic products, if you will, higher than many countries. Okay, I mean, Amazon, Facebook, Google have GDPs higher than huge countries, okay, like Chile, Panama, many others, okay. And these companies now have become proxies for government to squelch speech. And not just those companies, there are many others, of course, Twitter, right? Twitter is very aggressive at squelching speech. And, just spread this around, because, all of these folks that are in the bully pulpit now, that have the power to squelch speech or to try and make someone look bad because they're expressing a certain point of view that, they disagree with, right? Just remember, they're coming for you next. They're coming for you next. Okay. So that's why what Voltaire said is so important. I disapprove of what you say. In other words, he doesn't agree with it at all. He may totally disagree with what the person is saying, but he will defend to the death their right to say it. And that is just a critically, critically important thing. Okay, now on to business. But the one thing I didn't say there on the last thing is, there's a reason that the First Amendment is first. Because it's the most important one, right? The right to free speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, right? So, very important stuff. Demographic cohorts. We talk about demographic cohorts a lot on the podcast and my YouTube channel. And this is it's so important to understand, because there are very predictable and reliable ways that these groups, we're just talking about groups, right? Group rights. There's no such thing as group rights. Think of it if you did this with demographic cohorts. Well, and they do that, by the way. Certain lobbying groups lobby, especially for older people, like the AARP, right? Is one example. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't be allowed to do this. Okay, this is fine that they do it, right? Although lobbying has its own massive set of corruption behind it. But what I am saying is that certainly when you look at people in the AARP or people in that age group, right, retired people, right, you can't lobby for them as a group and say that that group has certain rights and the millennials have certain rights and the Gen Xers, like me, I'm a Gen Xer, they have certain rights and the baby boomers have certain rights and the Gen Zers just coming of age, right, that they have certain rights. Because guess what happens? People in those groups disagree with each other. Imagine that. They don't all agree that their rights should be this right or that right. They want different rights as individuals because the smallest minority on earth is the individual. Very important to remember that. Anyway, when we're looking at this from an economics perspective and we're trying to understand, what will happen next, what will happen in the economy and the stock market and the real estate market with consumer products and the sales of those products. I've had Harry Dent on the show many times, and Harry Dent, gets a lot of flack for bad predictions, but he's made some really good ones too. Some certain things when you look at demographics and you look at these different cohorts in demography, certain things happen, right? When there's a baby boom, for example, sales of baby food and diapers go way up. Imagine that, really reliable things that you can really, really predict quite well. So it's really important to pay attention to demographics, to study demographics. I think it's a fascinating study, and these are the percentage of the population that belong to these certain cohorts. So Generation Z, okay, is about 26%. These are the youngest that are quantified right now as a cohort, as a group, without group rights, because there's no such thing as group rights. Okay. And then the millennials, we've certainly heard enough talk about the millennials, 22%. Gen X, okay. Now, by the way, I should make the disclaimer here that demographers differ on these numbers a little bit, and they also differ on the year that these different groups were born. So they're not exact, okay, but roughly. Okay, so Gen X, 20% of the population. I think this is overstated, and that's why I said that, because I'm a Gen Xer, and my demographic cohort's only about 46 million. And by the way, when I got this chart, it did not say if it was US or global. So it's probably US. Almost always these things are US studies. But about 20% is Gen X. That's 46 million Americans compared to millennials, about 80 million Americans. That's why it seems like these percentages are not accurate on this particular opinion of it. But baby boomers, and by the way, here I'm going to disagree again, that's about 76 million Americans. So here they've got baby boomers being higher than millennials. And actually, that's slightly off. Millennials, by the way I look at it, are a little higher than baby boomers. Okay, bigger generation. But the biggest is Gen Z coming up, and they haven't really hit their stride yet. So we'll see. Now, the greatest generation is the one commonly thought to have really built America and largely built the Industrial Revolution. And of course, they're getting older. They're passing on, and that's about 9% of the population. But anyway, just interesting stuff there. And here again, talking about Gen Z being the largest demographic cohort of all. And there's the breakdown again. Again, I do want to say there are some differences. If you look on Wikipedia, if you do your research, you'll find that these demographic cohort sizes do vary quite a bit. But post your questions and comments below, and I will get them. I've got a few of them coming in, and I can't stay with you super, super long today because I'm actually going somewhere. Can you imagine that? Going somewhere. I'm going to a conference. I've got a conference next week. I haven't been to a conference boy, I used to go to like 2 conferences a month, or I'm hosting a conference too, sometimes. And oh, by the way, that reminds me, we are hosting our pandemic investing conference. Yes, it's coming up. Go to pandemicinvesting.com. Very excited about that. This is a totally new conference for us. And that is coming up in about 3 weeks, I think. And we've got early bird ticket prices on sale. It's virtual, so you don't have to go anywhere. We'll just see you on Zoom. And that's going to be a great conference. So pandemicinvesting.com, you can get the free mini book there, or register for the conference. There's a link right on that page. Okay. So that was a hiccup, by the way. If you heard that, I did hiccup. Tried to hide it, but I couldn't. So let's get into an interview I did on George Gammon's show. This was several months back, but I want to talk to you about refi till you die. So I'm going to actually play this video for you, but I'm going to be frequently interrupting it to make various points, because I thought I explained it pretty darn well in this interview. And I think you'll get a lot out of it. Now, this is the most tax efficient way to extract wealth from your portfolio. So let's go ahead and cue this up. And I hope the sound works well. Actually, let me stop this. Okay, there's another way to do this. Just one moment here, folks. Got a technical. Okay, stop sharing the screen. 1 second here, folks. I'll be right with you. Let me just get this figured out. There's a better way to do this where I can give you direct sound. And that's what I want to do. I want to give you direct sound here. And here it is. I think I found it. So here we go. The sound should be good. Let me know in the comments if the sound is okay. But let's go ahead and dive into this.
All right, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to bring someone to the show that I have a tremendous amount of not only professional respect for, but personal respect as well. As a good buddy of mine and a favorite of the channel, Jason Hartman, real estate expert extraordinaire. Welcome back, buddy.
Hey, George, great to be here. Thanks for having me back.
Last time, or one of the previous episodes where we had you on, we got into this concept called refi till you die. I think that's a term that you coined. Yes. So I think this is extremely important, and it's something that the average person can leverage, for no pun intended, to maybe take some money out and as a way to defer taxes or to use as another investment property. But a lot of people don't understand this concept, and it's something that you've got down to a science. So I'd love to explore that on this episode of The Rebel Capitalist.
Absolutely, George. So on previous episodes of the show, we discussed how to use inflation to create wealth. This is literally...
Hang on, folks. Let me try and fix the sound here. Apologies. You know how technology is. So give me a break. I'll be with you in just a moment. And thank you, Jonathan, for pointing out the sound being low. I am going to fix that here for you. And that's not the way to do it. Okay, I got to start over here and do this. And then that. And then this. And then click share audio. Here we go. Let's see if it works better now. I think it's going to be a lot better. The hidden wealth creator with real estate investments. Most investors, as we all know, will say that real estate's a great hedge against inflation, but it's dramatically more than that through the technique I taught on one of the prior videos I did with you called inflation-induced debt destruction. Mm-hmm. And then we also discussed on the show the Hartman risk evaluator. We discussed the LTI ratio, not the LTV ratio that commonly people know, which is the loan to value ratio. This is the land to improvement ratio, and we discussed that. And one of the things that is sort of a theme of all my teachings on the podcast over the last 15 years, and to my audiences at our live conferences, George, is the idea of leverage and how incredibly powerful leverage is for us as real estate investors. that will not come as a big surprise to most people listening. But there's much more to leverage than the typical person thinks. Of
Mhm.
course, it's great because, and I'll just use these as round numbers because they're simple. Okay, if you put 10% down on a property and you have 10% appreciation, your gross return on investment, not the net, of course, because there are costs and so forth, but just to roughly make the understanding possible, you basically got a 100% return. $1 million worth of real estate, you put 100,000 down, um, goes up to 1.1 million, you got 100,000 back on your $100,000 investment. That's 100% return, right? And that's
Yeah.
wonderful. But it's of course more complicated than that. That's just to illustrate the point. Now, a lot of people say, well, Jason, look, if you use a lot of leverage, I see the benefits with the leverage. And if I keep levering my property up and I use the strategy you talk about called equity stripping, which is the idea that over the years, as your properties gain equity through either appreciation or mortgage pay down, and remember, the wonderful thing about the debt we use is that it's self-liquidating debt. We don't pay our own debts with income property. Our tenants pay our debts
Right.
for us. We effectively outsource the debt payment obligation to the tenant. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But if we keep pulling equity out of our properties as the mortgages are paid down and the properties appreciate over time, how do we ever get rich? Right? Yeah, that's the question. Where's our payoff? Well, okay, we sell the property someday and we take a capital gain, right? So what I want to talk to you about today, and I think your audience will really benefit from, George, is the idea of, as you said, what I call refi till you die. What we're looking for here is we're looking for the most tax efficient way to extract the wealth from our real estate portfolio. Not only that, we also want to look for the best asset protection strategy. Now, asset protection is a giant subject. Of course, the first step is good insurance. Then you could talk about entity formation, have LLCs or corporations or a trust, or, there's a whole bunch of complicated stuff. I've interviewed many attorneys on my podcast over the years discussing those things, and they're all fine. But as I always say, the best asset protection is a high loan balance. Okay, counterintuitive. The best asset protection and the best insurance on your property is a high loan balance. Why is that? Well, think of any natural disaster. Think of Hurricane Katrina, which was this giant natural disaster that affected many, many property owners in the US. The people, George, that had a lot of equity in their property got burned the most. The people that had very little equity in their properties made out the best. And I'll tell you why. Attorneys general for 6 states in the affected areas made a deal with the big mortgage companies to put a moratorium on mortgage payments. And FEMA came in, offered all sorts of aid and help. And many people just walked away from their properties and said, this is too much. I can't handle it. Here, bank, you can have it back. Okay. And, essentially, that's the deal you make with a lender. You say, look, I'll either pay the payments or I'll give you back the collateral. That's the deal. That's what the deal is when you enter into that. And the lenders like that deal because real estate is a historically proven asset class, and they usually make out okay. They usually get the collateral back and they make out okay, or they get the payments, one
Yeah.
or the other, and the loan is ultimately paid off.
Yeah.
During yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. It just reminds me of that saying that if you owe the bank $1 million, you got a problem. If you owe them
Right.
100 million, they got a problem.
Right. Absolutely right. That was a J. Paul Getty saying. He was the world's first billionaire. And J. Paul Getty said that. He said, if you owe the bank $100, that's your problem. If you owe the bank $100 million, that's the bank's problem. Okay. And what we find is that the actual behavior in this kind of situation during the Great Recession, just over 10 years ago, for example, is that the lender becomes your partner when you have challenges. If
Mhm.
you don't have a loan, or if you have a low loan balance, the lender then becomes your predator. They become your enemy. And think about it from their perspective. Look, I'm a lender, okay? I lend money on real estate deals all the time. I have a couple of companies that finance real estate deals. That's what we do. I have a company that brokers real estate deals, and a media company. That's what you see on the screen now, my podcast network. And so uh, that behavior, basically, you want to make the lender your partner, so that if you run into problems, your partner is there to help you. Okay. And you also have a much better tax strategy, a much better insurance policy, if you will, a form of insurance with this plan. So here is the basic idea. And I'll just go to the slides here. This is the example I want to share. Now, I want to say to your listeners, this is definitely more complicated than what I'm showing. It's
Right.
not too complicated, but I've simplified things for the purpose of example. I've rounded off numbers, I've simplified things, and what you'll find is that it's probably much better than the example I'm about to share. Okay. But just for purposes of speed and efficiency, you got to round off the numbers to show the
Yeah.
concept. Okay. So here's the idea. Let's say that someone is watching this video today or listening to your podcast, and they're hearing this and they're not seeing the illustrations. Of course, you can see those on the YouTube channel. What we're suggesting is that that investor might buy $1 million worth of property. Okay, $1 million worth. And in our world, that would be 10 $100,000 homes, inexpensive properties, okay? Because we like those bread and butter properties in those nice, conservative, boring, linear markets with a great yield, with great cash flow. And so you'd be diversified, because ideally you'd spread those 10 properties among 3 markets.
Mhm.
So you'd have some geographical diversification. The old saying in real estate is all real estate is local. All real estate is local. And to buy those 10 properties, assuming you can qualify for the financing and such, you would put $200,000 down, or 20% down.
Right.
You would have closing costs depending on the type of borrower you are, the type of loan program you choose, of maybe somewhere around 3.5% approximately.
Mhm.
So you need $235,000 to acquire the portfolio in that example. And then we say you should have at least 4% in reserves, money in the bank for contingencies, for problems, for vacancies, for unexpected repairs. You never want to be forced to sell a property because you weren't prepared. Okay.
Yeah.
So 4,000 or 4%, which is $40,000 in reserves. So the total is $275,000. And the beauty of income property, of course, is that the bank pays for 80% in this example of your investment. Try that in the stock market, or a mutual fund, or with gold or silver or platinum or palladium or Bitcoin or anything else, right? You don't have the great debt opportunity. Income property is the most debt friendly asset class in America. It's the most tax favored asset class in America, and it's the most historically proven asset class in the entire world.
Right.
So $275,000 to buy the $1 million portfolio. Okay, let's move on. Now, the good old Jerry Maguire, Tom Cruise, from the movie, what was his famous saying? It was, "Show me the money, show me the money," right?
Yeah.
Yeah, show me the money. Now, if you keep your properties leveraged up, you're not going to have great cash flow because they're levered and you don't have much equity in them. And I want you to keep it that way. I think that's the best way to do it. And I'll tell you why. Okay, so let's get into some examples here. Now, this is refi till you die. I'm going to guide you right through it. Okay, so this chart basically shows the $1 million portfolio value, right?
Okay.
To acquire that portfolio, we needed 235,000 plus reserves of 40,000 extra just in the bank on the sidelines, ready for any problems or contingencies. When we buy this portfolio, we have $800,000 in loans, and that means we have $200,000 in equity. That's our down payment was $200,000, right?
Mhm.
So everybody understands that's how the journey begins. Okay. Now, I'm sure anybody who listening who's, over 35, 40 years old understands that time passes a lot faster than we all think, doesn't it? It goes really quickly. And so the example here I give is I'm using what's called the rule of 72. Okay. And the rule of 72 basically shows you when a number doubles in value. Okay.
Yeah.
And so here I'm using a 12-year cycle based on a 6% appreciation rate. Now, the appreciation rate is debatable. You can slice and dice it every which way. You can slice and dice it by location, by property price range, property type, newer properties, older properties. There's just a million ways to argue about that. But generally speaking, any expert you'll talk to will tell you that real estate in the United States of America will appreciate somewhere in the neighborhood of 6% annually on a nationwide basis. Okay.
Is that a nominal number or a real number?
A nominal number. Good question. Great. See, folks, you have a very sophisticated host here who's not going to let any funny numbers go by. Okay. There's no fuzzy math here. That is nominal appreciation, meaning that, of course, it's not real dollars, right? Because real dollars are the purchasing power of those dollars. Nominal dollars are just the name of those dollars. Okay. So we're only talking about nominal dollars. You're absolutely right. But interestingly, there is a little bit of actually kind of a significant caveat to that. So again, that's nominal dollars not adjusted for inflation, and so you'll understand that. And I'm getting some good comments here, so keep your comments coming. And by the way, please comment and let us know where you're listening from or where you're watching from. I'd love to know people's locations, and I just love it when I see like people all over the country, all over the world. It's super cool. So please comment with that. So I hope everybody's keeping up so far. So now basically we just acquired these, in this example, 10 properties, $100,000 each. So $1 million portfolio. And that costs us about $235,000. And then in addition to that, we have $40,000 or 4% of the value of the portfolio in reserve. Okay, so that's what we've got so far. And nominal dollars, nominal, the definition of that word is in name only. That's what nominal means, in name only. So it's just the name of something, right? It's not the value of something, it's just the name of something. And nominal means not adjusted for inflation, versus real dollars mean inflation adjusted dollars. Okay, so understand it is a nominal example. Again, on many other episodes, I've talked about inflation-induced debt destruction. We're not going to be able to do that next week because on next week's live stream, we've got our whole team coming on. We're going to have the biggest live stream ever. It's going to be everybody, all hands on deck. Well, almost everybody, not everybody, but a big part of our team members will be on next week's live stream. But maybe the week after, I'll do some real examples on what I call inflation-induced debt destruction. It's basically a strategy that I've been talking about for 17 years now, where inflation pays off your loans for you, right? It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But understand here, nominal dollars we're talking about. Okay, and thank you for posting where you are located. I love it. Keep them coming. So we got Add-on in Vancouver, Canada. That is such a beautiful city. We got Luciano in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I have not been to Brazil yet. I've been to 87 countries, but not Brazil. I gotta go. I gotta get to Brazil. I want that Instagram shot by the Redeemer, okay, as well as many other things. We got Eric from Bend, Oregon. That's a beautiful place. I love Bend. And Woody is in Ukaipa in the Socialist Republic of California. Woody, I hope you're working on moving out of there because I escaped 9 years ago. And I know that's something we're commonly talking about on the show. So I know you follow that. And then we've got Cheryl is from, how do you pronounce that, Cheryl? Guelph, Ontario, Canada. Well, I'll just say Ontario, Canada. And by the way, Canadians, you guys do it right here, but it's so funny. And this is a bad reflection on America. You know, whenever I go to a conference or, you know, I'm traveling around the world and, you know, I meet people and I say, you know, where are you from? And they say, Canada. Are you kidding? Canada? That's like saying I'm from the US, right? You know, Canada's a giant country, really giant country. You got to say what city. So thank you for saying what city, even though I don't know that city, Cheryl, but Ontario, Canada, beautiful place. And we got Jonathan from Shreveport, Louisiana. Awesome. And Peter from Colorado Mountains. Oh, I love Colorado Mountains. I love Aspen. Such a beautiful place. You know, John Denver, great, good stuff to listen to in Colorado, really good. And then the gold color is in Long Beach, and he says total shithole politics. I guess no censoring here. Abdul says, love your work, U.S. real estate investor here in Singapore. Oh, what a gorgeous place Singapore is. I remember last time I was in Singapore, I had to stay at the Marina Bay Sands Hotel. Now, that is that iconic hotel where there are three skyscrapers, and on the top looks like a big giant ship, and it is a swimming pool. And I swam in that pool. It was definitely expensive to stay there at the Marina Bay Sands, but what a beautiful place. Do you know there is a Discovery Show program on that Marina Bay Sands Hotel? And underneath the pool that spans three buildings, three high-rise buildings, there are a whole series of a bunch of jacks, literally jacks that are operated by hand, you know, like a car jack. And every day or two, the workers, the engineers have to go in there and jack the pool up. That's what they're doing. They're adjusting the jacks because the three buildings that it sits across sink into the earth at slightly different rates, and it makes the pool uneven. So they've got to constantly play with those jacks to level out the pool. Incredible piece of engineering. Wow. Okay, so Cheryl is 1 hour west of Toronto. Awesome. Good stuff. We got, how do you say that? Marriage? Sorry, I can't pronounce that name. From Dallas, the Big D, Dallas, Texas. Awesome. And then Daytona Part. See, these are handles, obviously. From Port Orange, Florida. And then we've got Shimaskim from Spartanburg, South Carolina. I used to own a home in Spartanburg, a rental property. That's a beautiful place, too. I love that place. And then, of course, David Nelson is in the Socialist Republic of California in Folsom, the Folsom chapter, he says. Good stuff. All right, let's get back to the refi till you die topic. Here we go. As the property appreciates, it's appreciating in real dollars each time.
Okay. One of the ways that, and I'll just start from scratch here, and you can tell me if this is the direction you were going. I think it'll help the audience, and it'll also go back to what you're saying on how a real estate investor can make money on inflation.
Right.
Using your previous example, if you put $10,000 down on a $100,000 property and the value of that property goes to $110,000, well, you made 100% return because you have a $10,000 of additional equity for your $10,000 cost basis.
Right.
What most people don't realize is if that property were to go up with the rate of inflation, so it didn't increase in real terms, it only increased in nominal terms, although your house doesn't buy any more goods or services, whether it's priced at 100,000 or 110,000, you actually gain purchasing power because the rate of inflation in that situation was 10%, but your money increased by 100%. So although the house only went up with the rate of inflation, your purchasing power still increased substantially.
Above inflation. See, that, George, what you're describing is what I call the double inflation arbitrage. That's exactly what you're describing, and it's a beautiful thing. Okay, so there's our example. That's our starting point. We got this $1 million portfolio. Now, we let 12 years go by. The reason we picked 12 years is because based on that 6% appreciation rate, in 12 years, the portfolio value will double. It'll jump by double. Okay. So now, 12 years later, so let's take an example. Say you're listening to this and you're 40 years young, and 40 ain't what it used to be. That's pretty young by today's standards. If you're taking care of yourself, I mean, it's a whole new world. 40 is the new 25. Okay. So, it really is. I mean, there are incredible advances around the corner in the world of longevity and biohacking. I have a show by that name, the Longevity and Biohacking Podcast. And I know you know that. I explore some of these issues and how they affect the economy and society, because we got this aging population. And man, that's going to affect inflation significantly. It's a whole nother show we should do on that. That's interesting. Okay.
But also pertaining to this, that Social Security might not be there if people are living to be 100 years old, because the Social Security, it's not there anyway. But even if it was there, it's only meant to last until the average life expectancy. Which, of course, when Social Security started, they set the age in which you'd start to collect after the average life expectancy, or after the time where you're expected to die. So they said, oh yeah, you'll collect Social Security at 61, but the average life expectancy at that time was 60.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was a good idea back then. Now they're going broke trying to keep the promise. So they'll keep the promise probably in nominal dollars, but in real dollars that'll be worthless almost. Okay, so that's the reality. Okay, so you start out, you're 40 years old. Okay, then 12 years go by, you're 52 years young. Okay, 52 years young, and your portfolio has now gone to $2 million. So now we look on the chart. You've gained $1 million in gain through that appreciation, and we're not counting positive cash flow, tax benefits, mortgage pay down. This is a super simplified example that it's better in real life. Okay, it should be better in real life. So $2 million portfolio, you go to the bank and you say, hey, I want to refinance my portfolio now, and I want to get an 80% loan to value ratio. So the bank says, okay, we will loan you $1.6 million, and we're going to pay off your $800,000 in loans, okay, and give you a new loan for $1.6 million, 80% of $2 million portfolio. Now your equity position has doubled. You now have $400,000 in equity, but you have $800,000 in cash. Okay. Now that cash, let's assume that you're not listening to George's show and you're really unaware, and you stick that cash in your mattress and you earn zero return on it. Okay, which you would never do. But let's just, for purposes of our super simple example, let's do that. Or maybe you live on the cash, right? And you want your portfolio to work with you, or to work for you. So say you just take the $800,000 and divide it by 12 years till the next refi till you die cycle. You have now tax-free income, because there's no tax on borrowed money, of $67,000 a year, just rounding off slightly. Okay. So
to be clear, guys, because I think a lot of people right here, Jason, would be saying, well, yeah, but Jason, my loan amount has gone up so much. My mortgage payment will also go up, but they're forgetting that the renters are paying the mortgage. So they would get that $800,000 without having to take any more money per month out of their own pocket.
I mean, in 12 years, are rents going to be higher or lower than they are now? Obviously, they're going to be higher. They're always higher. I mean, that has been proven historically. There's never really been an exception. Over the long term, rents go up. No question.
Even if you look at the great financial crisis, rents went up there as well.
Yeah, because people were pushed out of the housing market. They were pushed out of the ownership market and into the renter market, into the renter pool. So that actually ultimately strengthened rents. There was a little time there when they softened a bit, but that was only because they weren't foreclosing on the houses and there was no price discovery. Okay, but as soon as the politicians got out of the way, it all started working when the free market could do its thing. So now we've got our $67,000 a year in passive income, which is earning zero return. We're just sticking our $800,000 in a shoebox and we're pulling out 1/12 of it every year. And now we go to the next cycle. By the way, the timing could be anything. Of course, you're not going to do it exactly at every 12 years. This is just an example to show you how it would work as the portfolio doubles in each cycle based on the rule of 72s. And you've also had some positive cash flow. I mean, look, when you buy this portfolio today, if anybody goes to jasonhartman.com, they click on the properties page and they look at the property performance that my company offers, they will see that a typical property will usually generate about $200 per month positive cash flow if it's fully leveraged. Okay. So in this example today, those 10 properties would probably generate around $2,000 a month in positive cash flow. We're not even including that. That's why this example is so much, it's so much better than the example in real life, hopefully.
Yeah,
I mean, listen, things go wrong. I don't want to say that this is not without its challenges. Occasionally you're going to have to evict a tenant, you're going to have to do a repair. We all are mature enough to know that, nothing is perfect. Okay.
Yeah, but looking at the 800,000 that you extracted, wouldn't that be a little bit more because within that 12 years time, the tenants have paid down your principal amount?
Yes, absolutely.
So there would be more equity there available to pull out from the loan from the bank, the refi?
Yes. Yes, of course there would. This is a super simplified example. Okay. So yes, you would have positive cash flow, equity, tax benefits. You'd have all kinds of benefits, inflation-induced debt destruction, like we talked about on the prior episode with you. So we have all that.
It's amazing. And you're only putting in 200 grand.
Right. Yeah. Well, 235 and 40,000 in reserves. So yeah, with closing costs, you got closing costs.
Right.
Okay. So now let's wait another 12 short years, which go back by in the blink of an eye. Of course, we all know that by now, right? Now, 12 years go by again. Our portfolio has gone from $2 million to $4 million. $4 million. Our gain is now $3 million. We're only 64 years young. We're a spring chicken by the new standards that are happening. I mean, look, it's not that far away that I'll be 64, and I feel great. Like I'm young, and I mean, it's not that close either. Okay, but like I'm actually starting to think of, maybe I should retire. I mean, I could have retired when I was, 2005. I could have retired. Okay, but I love doing this. I love helping investors. So it's just fun. But 64 will be the new 45. Okay, for example, right? And so now we've got a $4 million portfolio. We've got a $3 million in gain. We go to the bank and we say, look, I want to refinance again. I want an 80%. By the way, comment on that. Most people, the problem they're going to face is too much life left at the end of the money. It's like a whole new great problem to have, right? But it is a problem nonetheless. And if you don't believe that concept of what I just was talking about age, I want you to think of something. I want you to watch old movies. I'm always telling my listeners, watch old movies, watch old TV shows. And it's amazing, just like watching stuff from, and I don't even mean that old. I mean, from like the 70s. Okay. Watch a movie from the 70s. And if you can find one, find a depiction of like a 45-year-old. It's incredible how different that is than how we think of a 45-year-old today. It's just totally incredible how that whole concept has changed. So, I was kind of joking about it there, but I'm really not joking. It's a real thing. Okay, so couple questions. Dan is asking, and Dan, thank you for the question. If someone is already working with an investment counselor with my company, what additional information do you get from the pandemic investing seminar that the investment counselor doesn't provide? Well, it's much different, Dan. It's just tremendously different. And here's why. With working with our team members, you're going to be talking about specific properties, and they might answer specific questions for you and so forth. But it's a whole different thing to have like a formatted presentation, which is what you get when you attend the pandemic investing workshop. Okay. So, it's just a completely different thing. There's a big difference between being able to ask someone questions and get answers to those questions, and that's all great. That's one thing, versus being presented with a course. Obviously that's a very different kind of concept, different way to learn, right? So they're both valuable, but certainly a formatted course is very valuable, and that's why you should attend the summit. And it's super cheap. I mean, we've got early bird tickets right now. They're only $197, so it's like nominal. It's a nominal expense. Okay. Add-on says George always says that real estate only appreciates at the rate of inflation, so zero in real terms. Did you discuss this with George when it comes to your 6% number? Because inflation is not 6%. That is a great, it's a great point, and I'm glad you brought it up. So first off, George is more pessimistic than I am on real estate. We have our debates about this stuff, but what you have to understand, and the fallacy I can tell you might be believing, because this is what all of the idiots in the media try to say. It's part of the vast Wall Street conspiracy add-on. Okay. And here it is. Jim Cramer, Mad Money, of course, Jim Cramer, and none other than Nobel laureate economist Robert Shiller, who's written several books and is the name behind the Case-Shiller Index, which is completely misleading. And I've talked about that before. I think I talked about it last week, actually. And I showed you the chart of the Case-Shiller Index. But here's the thing. You are getting leveraged appreciation. And yeah, I think inflation in real estate generally only outperforms the consumer price index by a small margin. Usually most economists will agree that, it's about 2 or 3% above the consumer price index. So real estate does outperform it. Okay. But who cares? Even if it doesn't outperform it, even if it's only even, let's just assume it's even. Remember, with the income property, you're getting a leveraged return. So, and I'll use the 10% example. As an investor, you're probably doing 20% down. Okay. But 10% is easier for numbers because it's just a zero. You just move the zero, right? Or move the decimal point, as it were. So if you have 6% appreciation and you put 10% down on the property, now there are other factors, of course, but just to super simplify it, your return on investment is not 6%, it's 60%. Okay, $100,000 property, or let's take $1 million portfolio, because that's the example we're using here. $1 million portfolio, 6% appreciation means you got $60,000 in appreciation. Now, that doesn't include tax benefits, cash flow, or anything else, right? Or inflation-induced debt destruction or anything. It's just the leverage perspective only, okay? And then you have 10% down. Now, if you paid cash and you put $1 million down, you would have 6% gross return on investment just on the appreciation only. But with only 10% down, you now have 60%, 60%. Okay. So you magnify your return dramatically with leverage. Okay. That's the thing I want to point out. Okay. Okay. Mr. T is, do you own or rent your own personal residence? Well, unfortunately, Mr. T, I own. And I didn't want to own. When I moved to Florida 2.5 years ago, I really tried to find a high end rental because that is the best deal. You know, the vast majority of my life, I always owned my house. When I moved out of mom's house, I bought a condo in Irvine, California, and I moved in. My first place I moved into was a property I owned. And I've almost always owned the house in which I live. And that was a mistake. Why was it a mistake? Because I can get much better returns using that money to invest in income property than in my own home. And I own some really expensive homes over the years. And those homes can always be rented for a rent to value ratio very favorable to the tenant. But guess what I encountered when I moved to Florida? That was before the Airbnb crash, right? And that was when people were really doing well with these Airbnb properties. And it seemed that there was just no inventory of high-end rental properties. You know, I wanted to rent like a $2 million property because I know I can rent that property at a very favorable rent to value ratio for me as the tenant. Whereas an inexpensive property, when I own lots of cheap properties that I rent to other people, that rent to value ratio is very favorable to the investor. So the double arbitrage opportunity, and arbitrage again just means exploiting the differences in things, right? And you want to arbitrage as much as you can in life. So you basically arbitrage by getting a great deal on the house in which you live, and also getting a great deal on the inexpensive properties that you invest in, because the rent to value ratio is favorable for you in both circumstances. But so many of these properties, these high-end rental properties, were converted to Airbnb properties, and I only wanted a long-term rental. Like I wanted to sign a 2-year lease on a $2 million property and, pay 8 or 10 grand a month for that, which you could normally do. But before the Airbnb crash, everybody had converted those to Airbnb properties. So there's like nothing to rent. I just couldn't find anything I liked. So I did cave in and I bought a house. So there's your answer, but it's not ideal. Hello from Germany, Thomas. Awesome, awesome, awesome. When is the best time to invest in a villa in Sicily in a linear market? Well, I don't know much about Sicily. I've been to Germany many times, of course. Great place. But in Sicily, that's a linear market. Okay, you got me. I don't know. Even though it's a linear market, it's probably high priced, I'm guessing, but I don't know for sure. So you'd have to make another comment and give us more details, Thomas. Please do that. But, I've looked all over Europe. I've looked all over the world at investing offshore because there are, a few advantages to it for Americans, but the rent to value ratios just never work. The infrastructure is just never good. I like American real estate much, much better. Okay, Mr. T is back and he says, are you worried about government intervention on landlords' property rights? You can't kick out tenants even if they don't pay rent. Well, I'm not worried about that long term. Short term, I do agree that there are some concerns. But again, long term, I don't think it's a problem. And I'll tell you something, folks. You do read some stuff and see some stuff in the media about these eviction moratoriums and so forth. The CDC one is probably going to be overturned, in my opinion, because they are being sued by the National Apartment Owners Association, and just there's no way that's going to. I mean, listen. If a socialist idiot like Joe Biden actually becomes president, I mean, if he's awake for it, not that I have an opinion about this, but Joe Biden is unfit to be president. I know liberals say Trump is unfit, and hey, listen, Trump offends everybody. I get it. I totally get it. But Joe Biden is just completely out to lunch. Okay, there are a zillion videos you can watch on YouTube, and it's shocking. Okay, but if that kind of thing happens, yeah, it probably will there will be more against landlords. But remember something. The housing lobby, the real estate lobby is giant. It's like a sacred cow in our country. And nobody wants to mess with the real estate lobby too much. Okay. First off, there's the National Association of Realtors, the largest trade lobbying organization on planet Earth. Okay. That's about 1.5 million members. Okay. Then there is the National Apartment Owners Association, the NAA, who just sued the CDC. Then there are the 15 or really 16 million now, I believe, single family homes owned by small mom and pop investors like us, right? There's just it's just not going to happen. No, I'm not worried about it. That's the answer to your question. I believe temporarily there's this and that, but those are little bumps in the road. They're just not significant long term. Eric, what's the best place in Florida to invest? Well, Eric, the inexpensive linear markets, we have properties in Jacksonville, Ocala, and other Florida markets. Southeast Florida is really good. We've got a webinar on that you can check out. So please go to jasonhartman.com or pandemicinvesting.com, get on our email list, and you'll be emailed information about webinars and, one of our investment counselors, you can talk with them and get detailed property profiles and market profiles. And we've got those in long form on webinars for more information. But great question. And Florida is really the hot place right now. The CDC, Metal Bum says the CDC moratorium is bullshit for property rights. Yes, it is. And it's not going to stand. Don't worry about it. Folks, it's a funny thing in life. People worry about little bumps in the road when really you got to step back and look at the big picture. I mean, here's a great example, right? So that painting on the wall, right? If I were to go up and look at it really closely, I could see the brush strokes. But the painting is not about a bunch of individual brush strokes, it is about a bunch of them. It's not about one individual brush stroke, which is like these little bumps in the road that scare everybody and freak everybody out, like the CDC and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Step back and look at the whole painting in its totality. Look at the macro picture. Don't look at the brush strokes. Okay. That's what you got to focus on. Focus on the big picture. Okay. The CDC thing, don't worry about that. Okay. So say the CDC wins and this moratorium actually stands. First off, our tenants are paying rent, folks. This is just a non-problem in our world. Granted, in some of the big institutional apartments, there have been some rent strikes. But when we own a bunch of little single-family homes spread out, the tenants don't talk to each other. They don't gang up on the landlord. They don't form a strike. That happens in big institutional apartment buildings. All right. So again, don't let this little stuff blow you out of the water. Okay. Okay. I'm going to get to, there's a whole bunch of other questions here. I'll get to them in a moment. Let's get back to the video just so we don't lose track of what we're talking about. Refi till you die. That's the plan. So here we go. Loan to value, refinance. The bank says, okay, we'll loan you $3.2 million. That's 80% of $4 million. Mm-hmm. So now your equity has doubled again. You've got $800,000 in equity, and you've got cash out in your pocket of $1.6 million. Okay. Now, if you stick that in a shoebox and you earn zero return on it, which means you're clearly not listening to George's show. Okay. But say you just take 1/12 of that 1.6 million out every year, you will have 133,000 tax-free dollars every single year. Now remember, based on current tax rates, depending on where you live, that $133,000 is probably equivalent to about $200,000, somewhere in that neighborhood, if you pay taxes on it. But remember, there's no tax on borrowed money. No tax on borrowed money. Now let's look at this, George. As an aside, I want you to consider the old-fashioned way of doing this. The old-fashioned idea is, buy some rental properties, let the tenants pay off the loans, let the rents go up, get some tax benefits, and pay them off. Beautiful. Okay. Let your equity increase. Well, when your equity increases, your positive cash flow is going to increase. And guess what? That's taxable. You have to pay tax on positive cash flow.
Right.
Okay. And of course you have other tax benefits, but they're going to offset each other. Okay. So you're going to increase your tax liability by having positive cash flow. The better way to do it is to borrow out of your properties, and there's no tax on borrowed money. Okay.
Right.
So then you just reinvest that money, you earn a return on it, ideally buy more properties, or you
That's what I was
invest
going to
in,
say. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
this is why, look, income property has what we call self-liquidating debt. Okay. But it also has, if you keep buying more properties, a self-perpetuating uh, asset creation machine. Look, years ago in history, there was a time when everybody was fascinated with the idea, and they thought they could invent something called, and you know what I'm going to say, their perpetual motion machine.
Mm.
Okay. Everybody thought for a while that they could, outdo the laws of physics and entropy, right? And create a perpetual motion machine where once they kicked this flywheel into gear, it would just go forever and generate energy or run locomotives or whatever they wanted to do, or, you know, run a turbine forever, right? And no one ever invented the perpetual motion machine. But I would argue that this is it. Okay, because you can buy more properties, or you can invest in, whatever George is telling you to invest in 12 years from now, that is the hot investment of the day, or you can just live off the borrowed money. Okay, let's go one more cycle just for fun. 12 more years. Okay, now your portfolio has doubled again to $8 million. You've got an $8 million portfolio. Beautiful. You've got $7 million in gain. You go to the bank, say, I'd like to refinance for 80% loan to value. The bank says, okay, we will now loan you $6.4 million. We're going to pay off the much less than 3.2 million you owe by then, because it will have been paid down by the tenant. But for simplicity, let's assume you paid nothing off. You just have the same loan balance. Now you have $1.6 million in equity. So your equity position has doubled again, and you have $3.2 million in cold hard cash. Okay. And if you divide that by 12, you have now $250,000, $250,000 every year to live on if you get 0% return on your money. Okay. And you don't invest it and you stick it under your mattress, and it's tax free, which probably would be equivalent to somewhere in the neighborhood of $350,000 taxable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think the pushback there would be that, well, Jason, I don't know that it's going to be 6% appreciation per annum because the housing market's in a bubble and all these things. But I think the counterbalance to that is that you are not including any type of return on the money that you extracted. It's like you're just using it as an annuity to go out there and spend, where if you took that 66,000 a year, 133,000 a year, and just bought more rental properties with it.
Yeah.
If you did the math on that, I'll bet you'd make even more in the long run than if you just calculate a 3% annual inflation, or maybe even a 1 or 2%, maybe flat. I don't know.
George, I'm really glad you brought that up. And you know what? We should do an episode sometime on how to analyze a real estate deal, how to read a pro forma, what numbers should be on a pro forma, and how to really analyze it. I've got a free video on that on my website at jasonhartman.com, which can help people. It's just a free 27-minute video, and it's very informal. I'm just going through a pro forma, and I am showing people how to read the numbers, how to analyze the deal, how to know, so many investors in any type of asset class, but real estate for sure too. A lot of them think they're losing when they're actually winning because they simply don't know how to do the math. And math is infallible. It's reality, okay? And you got to know how to do the math. But if you go to jasonhartman.com and click on the properties page, as George, you've done, you will see properties that generate a return on investment in excess of 20% annually, because income property is a multi-dimensional asset class. That's why you can actually get those types of returns, because you're getting them from many different areas, many different streams of ROI or return on investment. Okay, that's why you get them. But if you want to just look at it in a one-dimensional way, you could simply look at what we call one of the metrics on the performance, which is cash on cash return. Now, it's not as good as it used to be. I mean, look, coming out of the Great Recession 10 years ago, we used to have properties with cash on cash returns of 13, 15, 18, 19% annually, cash on cash, meaning that if the property doesn't appreciate, even if it depreciates, if nothing good happens except you maintain the same income to expense ratio, that's the cash on cash return, right? Now, properties, the deals aren't as good as they used to be. There's no question about it. I love when you get these, hokey guru, sleazy operators up there that say, well, there's never been a better time to buy real estate. Well, of course there's been a better time. 1972 was a much better time. Okay. So, I can't stand when I hear that. I just know I walk out the door when I'm at those conferences and think, oh, this guy's he's a scam artist. Anyway, but if you get a 10% cash on cash return, okay, just for round numbers sake, this initial portfolio, in addition to everything we've shown you here, would be generating $100,000 a year in cash on cash. Well, not exactly positive cash flow, but yeah, essentially in cash on cash return. And what that means is it's the amount of money you put into the deal versus the amount of money you're getting back on the deal in that 1 year. That's the 10%. So here, over the course of 12 years, you'd get $120,000 in cash on cash return, plus what you're seeing here.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that awesome? That's why income property is the most historically proven asset class in the world, because it's multi-dimensional. Multi-dimensional.
And this is exactly why I always suggest that people compartmentalize their portfolio and into investments, speculation, and insurance, but to use the definition of investments that I use, and that's that if you're buying an asset as an investment, it has to pay you to own it. If it doesn't pay you to own it, it's not an investment, it's a speculation. And me personally, I can't tell anyone what to do with their own money, but for me personally, I keep, well, now it's even more than that, but usually it's about 80% of my portfolio in an asset that pays me to own it. Of course, that's real estate.
Yeah, George, that is a great definition. What I say is the investment, or the definition of an investment, which is similar to yours expressed in another way. You'll know if something's an investment if it produces income. If it does not produce income, it is not an investment. It is only a speculation. It is only gambling. Okay, and granted, listen, you can win speculating and gambling sometimes. Okay, I mean, you might buy cryptocurrency or a property in some cyclical market that doesn't make any sense from day one, that you just get lucky and it appreciates like crazy, and you make a bunch of money. Good for you. But look, as we age, we realize, look, I don't want to have to earn my money again. It's pretty hard to earn it, okay, from the day job. So I want an investment that is conservative and prudent, and I'm going to be a yield-oriented investor. I'm going to be a cash flow investor. In the stock market, they'd call that a dividend investor. Okay, that's the more conservative way to invest. And because income property has these multidimensional characteristics, I can be a conservative investor, and at the same time, I might get lucky and have a bunch of appreciation too. But don't count on it. It's not the game. Okay. This kind of appreciation that we're talking about today is nothing extraordinary. It's just boring, linear appreciation. Okay, we're not saying that, hey, you're going to buy a property in LA or San Francisco and or Miami, some high-rise crazy condo thing or something like that. And hey, you're gonna time it right and get lucky, and it's gonna go up 25% in a year. Our strategy is just very conservative. Buy properties that make sense the day you buy them, hold them for cash flow, let them appreciate slowly, let inflation induce debt destruction and cash on cash return make you very wealthy, and keep buying the properties with the returns from the initial portfolio. And that strategy is a winner. We've helped thousands of clients do it over the last 15 years, and we can help your listeners too.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I always go back to gambling because before I even get as an entrepreneur, I was well, I shouldn't say that. I was an entrepreneur first, but one of the things that really
being an entrepreneur is gambling.
yeah, there you go. But it's using the numbers to your advantage. Right. So when I really started to make money as an entrepreneur, let's just put it that way. Before I did, I learned how to count cards. It's kind of a fluke, but I really enjoyed it. And then I took that
in blackjack.
What's that?
Or in blackjack or poker?
Correct.
Or what was your game? Yeah, blackjack.
Yeah, but it's counting cards. So I took that same probabilities mindset into the business world, and that's where I made quite a bit of money. But my point is that if you had to guess, I mean, you are an expert. You've been in almost every single real estate market in the United States. If you went into, let's say, Seattle or LA right now, and you bought a property with speculation, negative cash flow, then you bought it because you thought that it was going to double in value over the next 10 years. What do you think the odds of that coming to fruition would be? Just right ballpark.
That's a very interesting question. And, this would be another good thing to talk about in depth on a future episode that we do. But there, three types of markets again, and we talked about this before: linear market, cyclical market, and hybrid market. Okay, the markets you mentioned are the cyclical markets, the ones that on a chart look like a roller coaster, big ups, ugly lows. Okay, we like the linear markets; they just kind of chug along. They have minor ups and downs, but generally they just have a very modest upward trajectory over time. And those cyclical markets, we did a comparison on that, and we got the help of the chief economist for First American. Okay, now First American is a bunch of companies, but it's mostly a title insurance company, a big, giant title insurance company. It might be the biggest one in the country, I'm not sure. The First American economist did this study comparing linear markets with cyclical markets. And interestingly, they used the place I spent the vast majority of my adult life. And I bought a lot of properties there. And I owned a real estate company that Coldwell Banker later bought that sold a lot of these types of properties to people, mostly homeowners. But, there were some gamblers and speculators and investors. And hey, I was one of them from time to time too. I'm not saying never speculate, just only do it with 10% of your wealth and be a little wealthy before you do it, because you only want to play that with what you can afford to lose. Okay, you can win speculating sometimes. I wouldn't deny that for a moment. I've won speculating sometimes, but this comparison was Orange County, California, where I lived most of my adult life, versus, get this, Flint, Michigan. Okay, Flint, Michigan. Okay, and over, I believe, and I don't have the chart with me, but I'm going to bring it for a future episode, and we're going to look at this chart together, because it's fascinating. Basically, what it shows is over time, and if you're looking at the video and not just listening, the ups and downs in the market. Orange County, it's got these glorious highs when things are going crazy, money's cheap, things are appreciating. Then it's got these really ugly downturns and really ugly troughs on the chart. And Flint, Michigan, that, was mostly kind of crappy, honestly. It just wasn't very impressive by any means. I mean, it's Flint, Michigan. Hey, don't drink the water. Okay. This was before that. Okay. But I just couldn't resist. Sorry. I apologize. probably not a very politically correct joke, but about the water crisis in Flint, Michigan, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, over time, this is an unbelievable revelation because nobody, including myself, would have thought it would have turned out this way. Over the course of this 18-year period that they had on the charts, and admittedly, it depends what 18 years, but usually in 18 years, you're going to cover it because you'll probably have 2 recessions and the rest and 2 boom times. Okay. So you're probably going to cover it, okay, in 18 years or so. Interestingly, Flint, Michigan appreciated, and forgive me if I'm slightly off on these numbers because I'm not looking at it, but Flint, Michigan appreciated at like 5.8%.
Hmm.
And Orange County, high flying, what they used to call Orange on the Riviera, where I live between LA and San Diego, which is this, wealthy area, very expensive homes. I lived in Newport Coast, one of the most expensive zip codes in the entire country. Okay. It's super expensive, $800 a square foot for a house, plus now, I'm sure that was 20 years ago. And Orange County, California, 5.3%.
Yeah.
Worse than Flint, Michigan. Why is that? It's because it's like the example you always hear on the stock market. Look, if you own a stock and it's worth $100 a share, and if that stock goes down by half and now it's only worth $50 a share,
That's right.
You lost 50%. But if you want to get back to 100, you have to gain 100%.
That's right.
So the market has to make an extraordinary move to get your money back. Like we talked about the last time we were together, George, it's more about return of your money than return on your money.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's the Warren Buffett value investing idea, is that, on the cyclical types of stocks or real estate, you lose so much when you have that downturn that even with massive appreciation, in that example at least, you didn't get it back. You would have been better off in the boring, unnewsworthy linear market that isn't like any trophy location by any means.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Jason. Well, that makes a lot of sense. I'm sure the viewers are going to absolutely love this content. It's really interesting ideas. So if any of the viewers would like to find out more about you or any of the properties or what you do, where would they go?
Well, of course, they can go to jasonhartman.com. That free video that explains how to analyze a real estate investment is on the front page. Just grab that video, take a look at it. In 27 minutes, you will become very knowledgeable at how to read a pro forma, how to look at the metrics, how to analyze them. And then, of course, my podcast, where you found me, George, years ago, back in, I think, 2012, is called The Creating Wealth Show. It's available on any podcast platform. And join us for the podcast. We have a lot of big economic celebrities, economists. We do in-depth analysis. We had Ron Paul on. We had Jim Rogers has been on 3 times. Steve Forbes, many others. George Gammon, not the least of which is George Gammon, of course, has been on the show. And you can find me on any podcast platform. Just search my name. Look for the Creating Wealth Show.
Awesome.
All right, everybody. So hope you enjoyed that. And let's get to some of your questions here. Let me see. Okay, let's remove this from the screen and grab some more of these questions. Okay, so Peter, I own 4 long-term rentals and 2 short-term rentals in the Rocky Mountains. No STR crash here. Not a single day of vacancy since the lockdown ended. Wow, that is fantastic. Peter, I'm guessing the reason you've had such good fortune is because your short-term rental properties are drivable and your visitors are probably driving there and they are escaping a higher density environment. Now, I don't know what time period that's over. You didn't mention that, but congratulations. Yeah, we're doing quite well with our short-term rental properties in St. Augustine, Florida, because that's a drivable location that offers a different experience than Orlando or Atlanta, which is 2 of the popular destinations where people come from them. Okay, so come from those areas to vacation in St. Augustine or retreat. You can ride out the pandemic there. Okay, so the gold color says if Biden becomes president, I will leave the USSA. Well, I would really caution you on that one. Even Obama couldn't destroy the United States, and he tried. But the U.S. it's a tough country to destroy because what do we have that's so great among many other things? We have the three branches of government and the checks and balances, and so it's very hard for a tyrant to ruin our country, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. Okay, Joe Biden would take away more property owners' rights. Yeah, well, I agree. He would try, but again, we have checks and balances. Don't stop worrying about all this stuff, folks. Okay, what you should worry about is the slow boil of inflation. Okay, that's what you should be worried about. All right, so watch out that inflation is eroding your wealth. Sunshine Girl, hey, Sunshine Girl, greetings from the Sunshine State. Hi everyone from the epicenter of overblown real estate bubbles, beautiful Australia. Yeah, Australia is beautiful. And are you in Sydney or Melbourne, or are you on the Gold Coast, or where are you located? Because obviously Australia is a big country and markets differ there, but certainly Australia has really had a pretty incredible economy. I mean, you haven't had a recession in like 3 decades there. That's a miracle. A lot of it, I would say, is because the Aussies are just sort of, I think, way too open to Chinese involvement in the country. And now China is trying to pull a lot of strings in Australia. So please don't let that happen to your country. But it's already happening. And yeah, I agree. Australia is a ginormous real estate bubble. Absolutely. So thanks for that comment. Okay. How does California get away with all the rent controls if that spreads to other states? What politically starts in California usually spreads. Well, I agree with that. That at least that was the case. That things that start in California do spread, but I don't think that's as true today as it has been over the past, you know, 30 years, 40 years, even 50 years. California is looked at as the problem child and the black sheep of the family nowadays, more than the progressive trendsetter. California is a disaster. I mean, most of us know that. So I wouldn't worry too terribly much about that. Again, folks, the thing to do is don't be paralyzed by worry about this thing and that thing and the other thing. The overall big trend is debt, inflation, and asset price inflation, and consumer inflation too, both of those. Okay. And if you're following our plan, you're going to benefit from the increase in the asset prices in which you invest through our network. And you're going to benefit from inflation induced debt destruction. And, in so many ways, I mean, it's a great opportunity right now. So, yeah, there's political risk, but in the US, the political risk is extremely low. Even if an idiot like Joe Biden gets elected president and or cheats his way into the office with these, mail voting by mail and so forth. Isn't it amazing? Before COVID, we would have never agreed to, vote by mail, like, in the sense that it is today. Okay. I mean, we always had it for absentee and stuff, but not like they're trying to do it now. So never let a good crisis go to waste, as Rahm Emanuel has quoted Winston Churchill, the originator of that quote. Okay. Okay, so he says, Rolf says, I own 14 properties in Jacksonville, Florida with no debt. Should I sell or refinance them? I'm a little jittery with dealing with bank loans. Hey, well, if those properties in Jacksonville are inexpensive, good rental properties with good rent to value ratios, you definitely want to refinance them and keep them. Okay. And your next comment is I got the answer from the video. Yeah, definitely refinance those properties. But the one thing I will say, if those are expensive properties that don't have good rent to value ratios, you should consider selling them. They probably aren't because they're in Jacksonville. So definitely refinance them. Use the proceeds of that refinance. There's no tax on borrowed money, so it's tax free. Use those proceeds to go and buy more income properties in good linear markets and uh, get them outside of Jacksonville. You've got to be geographically diversified. Geographically diversified. Okay. Would you refi your own personal residence? Yes, I definitely would do that, Mr. T. I would refi my own personal residence. I'd recommend that to buy more income producing property. Now, sadly, I should be doing what I'm telling you to do because I haven't done it myself yet. And I do need to refi my own personal residence. But I'm thinking I'm just going to sell it and buy a different property in a different market because this was my first Florida home. And, I'm not nuts about where I live. So I want to, there's two other cities I'm looking at that I'd like to try. Florida is such a big state, and it's like saying, California or Texas. It's a giant state, and there are lots of areas to live. So I keep holding off on doing my own refinance on my property because I'm just going to, I think, sell it and buy another property in another market. Now, hopefully, I can do a high end rental. I'd much rather do that, of course. But, again, we'll see when I start looking. I'm not seeing a lot from my initial searches. All right. Smart guys, Jason and George, thanks for the discussion. Hey, Metal Bum, thank you. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it. And thanks for the kind words. Okay. Sunshine Girl says, if you have funds and no debt, interest rates are at historic lows. Why wouldn't you refinance, save on taxes? Yes, absolutely. Sunshine Girl is right. With these low interest rates, a big part of the asset is the actual mortgage. It's not just the property. Most people consider the property to be the asset and the mortgage to be the liability. But mortgages right now are so cheap. They are an asset. They are a big, big asset. So take advantage of those super cheap assets. The mortgage assets are super cheap. Okay. I'm not a citizen or a resident. Interest rates would be higher for me. Only hard money lenders. Well, no, you could get a portfolio lender that'll finance you. Reach out to our team members through jasonhartman.com or pandemicinvesting.com, and we can help you. We can provide referrals that will finance foreign nationals. Yes, you will pay a little higher rate, but that's what Sarah says. We can refer you to a few lenders. Yes, absolutely. And you can email Sarah. She can help you with that. Okay. I'm in the same situation, Luciano. We can help you. So we can provide referrals. Real estate investor in Florida. Oh, don't do 100% down payment. We can help you with that. Okay. So definitely we can help you. I'm really not sure how to connect here on YouTube. I don't wish to hijack. Okay, well, you can reach out to us through pandemicinvesting.com or jasonhartman.com. Our investment counselors will contact you, and and you can reach out to Sarah directly. Oh, I don't see that. Thank you. Okay, this is just you guys talking in one of the conversation threads. Okay. Jason, do you believe there is a high probability that real estate market rental properties will crash in 2021 due to all the economic problems we're currently facing? No, I don't. I think look at folks, you got to understand this. I do think, and I am concerned about problems in the real estate market. Please hear that. The economy is super weird right now. And there are, how do you like that? Super weird, highly technical, sophisticated terminology I'm using there. Huh? But yeah, no question. There are big concerns, but inexpensive bread and butter housing, necessity housing in these good linear markets we recommend. You can find them at jasonhartman.com in the properties section. I'm really bullish on that. And especially with these super cheap mortgages. And you got to change the language here. Okay, folks, way too many people use the word crash. and they don't know what that means, and I don't know what that means. Does that mean, to most people, it means a crash in prices of properties? Prices go down. That's what they mean by crash. But in reality, you know, many times prices go down, but rents go up because nobody's interested in buying or nobody can buy. And so what do? The population didn't decline. They got to live somewhere, so they're renting. Okay. So, first of all, make sure you define the word crash. A lot of times we don't know what that word even means. Okay. But I would not worry about it. Okay. Eric says, good question. Okay. What does this say? What about the powerful deflationary forces technology brings, as described in the Price of Tomorrow book? I interviewed that author on my show recently, The Price of Tomorrow. Really interesting. Really interesting. And the volatility in real estate, I'm not concerned about that. Technology is a deflationary force. And remember, you have these opposing forces, right? On one hand, you have bad monetary and fiscal policy over here on this side, right? And on the other side, you have technology. The bad monetary and fiscal policy is very inflationary. The bailouts, the stimulus, inflationary. But at the same time, you have technology, which is a deflationary force. Now, to a large extent, we've already seen a lot of the deflationary forces of technology play out. There will be more. Technology, of course, will get better, but a lot of these efficiencies in the supply chain, in manufacturing, they're already here and with us. Certainly, offshoring is now trending back to onshoring. That actually will make technology a little bit more expensive. So, again, these are opposing forces. But through all of this, there has been massive asset price inflation. Income property, real estate, is an asset, and that has only inflated during the same times when technology has deflated the cost of, consumer goods like iPhones. Okay, these things have gone down in price. Okay, with technology, a lot of stuff has deflated, but at the same time, real estate values keep going up. So again, I wouldn't worry about that. It is an uneven thing. Okay. Woody is back. Woody says, how do you prepare, insure against natural disasters, hurricanes in the Florida market? Well, you have insurance and you have your insurance policy. And then beyond that, you have a high loan balance, which is the best insurance. Because if you have a claim and your insurance company tries to weasel out, I mean, listen, the court records are full of lawsuits for insurance bad faith. And that's just reality of life. Insurance companies, like anybody, they like collecting the money, but they don't like paying it out. So if they try to weasel out on your insurance claim, then what you do is you simply say to the lender they're trying to weasel out, and the lender will always want to protect their collateral. That's why I would rather have my insurance company fighting with, Chase or Bank of America or some big giant mortgage company than fighting with me over a claim. So again, I'm not too worried about that. And you got to remember something. The media makes a big deal about these natural disasters, but the actual number of people actually affected are dramatically lower than it would seem on the media. Okay. So again, not terribly worried about natural disasters. Oh, and Sunshine Girl is in Perth. Okay. Real estate doing well. Yeah. I've never been to that side of Australia. I've only been to the, the side where I went to Sydney and the Gold Coast. So got to take another trip back to Australia and see Perth and Fremantle on that side. All right. Sarah. Okay. So Sarah's just answering someone else's question, I think. Sunshine Girl's talking to Sarah. Okay. What components of real estate returns are compounding versus linear? Not sure what that means. Do you mean like when I teach the Hartman risk evaluator and I talk about how when you buy a property, you're really not buying one thing, you're buying two things. You're buying the land and you're buying the improvement or the house or the apartment building sitting on that land, right? That's two components. And in a linear market, um, those things are both linear, I guess I would say, but in a cyclical market, that land becomes very, very cyclical, which increases your risk quite dramatically. I'll do a future episode on the live stream, but of course, on my YouTube channel, you can see these. And on the podcast, you can hear them, where I talk a lot about the Hartman Risk Evaluator on the Creating Wealth podcast and really dive into that deeply. Okay. Okay. All right. So, okay, we got that one. We're almost finished here. Okay, where in Florida do you live? Palm Beach, Eric. Very expensive place, so do not invest. You know, um, live in places that you want to live, invest in places that are good to invest. They are almost never the same. Okay. You know what I say? Invest in places that make sense so you can afford to live in places that don't make sense. Okay. You can live in a luxury place and invest in necessity places. And Dwight is watching from Orlando. Welcome, Dwight. Thanks for watching. Okay. EM says, Jason, would you take money out of 3 properties I've had for 5 years to buy other properties? If you have equity in them, and by the way, I love the dog picture there. If you have equity in those properties, I would definitely engage in equity stripping and get the money out of those properties to buy more investment properties. And especially with rates as low as they are now, you don't want equity sitting around in properties, folks. Okay, get that equity out and refi till you die. All right, there are so many experts, some of them really popular, incredible, that suggest uh, real estate crash is really imminent. So many schools of thought. Sometimes, well, again, Rolf, look, this is this is it's easy to make general statements. The question is, define crash. What does that mean? Does it mean prices going down? And if prices go down, what will make them go down? Will it be an end to the low interest rates? Okay. So if that happens, or even if rates stay low but prices are trending down, then nobody's going to want to buy a house, right? The market just gets into this downward spiral where nobody wants to buy because they think prices are going down further. There's no urgency. So all those people, those millions and millions of people, tens of millions of people, sorry, that are in the renter pool, they don't go and buy a house. And so what does that do? That makes the renter market larger. The renter pool is larger. So what do landlords do? They push up the rents because there's a lot of demand. It's simple supply and demand. So they push up the rents and there's upward pressure on rents. So you just sit back and enjoy your increased cash flow. Okay. Then if there is a crash, well, we already talked about what does that mean? Does it mean prices going down? Does it mean rents going down? What does it mean? Okay, that's the first thing. But then what segment of the market is going to have a supposed crash, right? Is it going to be high-end luxury real estate in cyclical markets? Is it going to be cheap workforce housing, bread and butter housing like we recommend? The bread and butter housing, the basic necessity level housing that we recommend is very insulated from things like this, because if the economy really gets worse, you'll catch people moving down the socioeconomic ladder, right? You'll catch them moving down. And as they're moving down, they need, maybe they owned a house or they lived in a more expensive rental. And now things are worse and they move down. And now they're renting from you and they're paying you $1,400 a month, for example, right? And so you catch them moving down the ladder. You also catch people moving up the ladder. I showed a chart last week, I think it was, where I showed that the highest number of 18 to 29-year-olds ever in history are living at home with their parents. 52% of the population that is 18 to 29 is not that young, okay? 29 years old is living at home with their parents. That represents a huge shadow demand for more housing. Many, many millions of people will want to move out and get a house of their own. Okay, so I'm very bullish on inexpensive rental properties. Okay. Sunshine Girl. Okay. You're just talking amongst yourself, folks. I got to move to wrap up here. Okay. So Ramona says, do you put a clause in your contract for rent increases? And what? Yes, Ramona, I'm so glad you asked that question. Folks, we just had one of our investors who just sent me a message the other day, and he said he did a 2-year lease on one of his properties, and or no, I think he said he didn't do a 2-year lease, and he said he didn't want to do a 2-year lease because he was thinking that rents are going to increase, and he didn't want to be locked in at that rent for 2 years. Just wanted to do a 1-year lease. And I said, put an escalation clause in the contract. Super simple. Put an escalation clause where, this year, for the first year of the lease, the rent is $1,500 a month, for example. And then next year, you raise the rent by 3%. Okay, so if it's 1,000, that's going to be $30. If it's 1,500, it's going to be a $45 increase. And most tenants will agree to that. Just have an escalation clause in the lease agreement. You can do that. You could do a 5-year lease and have a clause that says the rent will increase at 3% every year. You could do a clause that says the rent will increase at the same rate as the consumer price index every year. You could have a clause that says the rent will increase at the CPI, consumer price index, plus 2%. So, you could increase it more than the CPI every year. Whatever you and the tenant will agree to is okay. The only thing is, if your property is in a place like the Socialist Republic of California, where we would never recommend investing, you will have some restrictions in terms of how much you can raise rent every year. So just be mindful of any local or state rules on that. Okay. Eric says, I'm up to 56 properties, 56 doors. Wow. Fantastic. Congratulations. Yes. That thing goes on a little long. Okay. Do you ever consider more units to be more risk or exposure and look to diversify elsewhere? Well, Eric, I don't know where your properties are. Where are those 56 doors? But I would definitely be diversified into at least 3 different markets, not more than 5 different markets, but at least 3. Every market has risk. Okay. There is nothing risk free. So you want to diversify geographically into multiple markets so that you reduce your risk. The old saying in real estate, all real estate is local. All real estate is local. So diversify geographically into at least 3 good linear markets, not more than 5. You can find these at jasonhartman.com. Click on the properties page and you'll find them there. All right, folks, I got to wrap it up because I have to go somewhere. I'm actually going somewhere. Can you believe it? I know. Getting out of the house. It's super rare nowadays. Thank you for all of your questions. I'm sorry I didn't get to all of them. And you know what? Also, I noticed that the program we use for live streaming does not save your questions. I wanted to go back and answer some of them on a prior broadcast I didn't get to. So please go to jasonhartman.com/ask and type your question in there. Or if you go to pandemicinvesting.com and get the free book or register for the upcoming event, then you'll be in contact with our team and you'll have ways to have our team answer your questions and so forth. So do that or whatever's convenient for you. But we're here to take your questions and, of course, answer them for you. And, you can always reach out to us at 1-800-HARTMAN. That's a U.S. phone number. So if you're calling from a U.S. phone, you can call us there, or jasonhartman.com or pandemicinvesting.com. And until next time, happy investing. We'll be back with another podcast episode tomorrow on the Creating Wealth Show. And really appreciate all of the great participation, all of the great questions today. And until next time, happy investing, folks. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye. Bye.